Sarney here with, I know if you've watched Dolphin football in the 1990s to 2000s, I don't need to give an introduction. Best left tackle in Miami Dolphin history, in my opinion, Richmond Webb. Welcome to the show. How you doing, sir?
Hey, Jason, how you doing? I'm doing good. Just at home, kind of like everybody else, and just trying to do the right things and being precautions, trying to stay on top of, the social distancing and everything they're asking us to do. But other than that, I'm doing pretty good.
Good to hear. I'm glad, you and yours, we had a minute or two to chat before the show, and you told me something really terrific, what you guys are doing in your house, and specifically what your wife is doing to really help out and kind of have that greater good mindset, which is awesome.
Yeah, she's used to kind of moving around. So what she did was, since we kind of got to stay at home unless we go to the grocery store or something like that, she has a sewing machine, and a friend of hers is a nurse, and asked, with a shortage of the mask and stuff that first responders, nurses, policemen, all that need, asked her could she make some masks for like nurses stuff to wear. So she went to like I think it's Joann's Fabric here in Houston, and picked up some materials and started sewing some masks. So I think she sold about 15 or 20 of them, and she's finished those, and now she's still got materials. So it's a sheriff station that were constables and stuff like that. So she's going to make up the rest of them and take some of those over there. So she's just trying to do her part to try to help out and try to help us get on top of this thing, and try to help things return to normal as fast as possible.
That's extremely commendable, and thank you on behalf of really everybody to you and your wife. And it's great when you hear that people are taking advantage, I guess, at the time to not really do anything selfish, but to do things selfless. And that really just is the Miami Dolphins kind of organization in my mind, because as I mentioned to you, Richmond, I grew up in New York, but I kind of found football in like 1990.
Okay.
Ironically, that was your rookie year. And a lot of fun things happened in like 90, 91, 92, 93, and we'll get into that. But I really, we had the 90s together, me, you, and Keith Sims. And I want to hear a little bit about, you guys came in round 1, round 2 together. Boom, boom. Well, that's a good idea. We'll talk about the Dolphins draft mindset, but talk to me about coming on into a class in 1990, you being from Texas, Keith, I believe Iowa State.
That's correct.
And I believe you guys just really hit it off. Tell me about that kind of experience, and was the plan from day one to solidify that left side?
Well, I think it was a huge surprise to, I think, everyone. Not that they took a lineman in the first round, but they took 2 linemen in the first 2 rounds. And then I think the other thing that surprised them is you take 2 rookies and put them on the left side of the offensive line, which is the blind side of the quarterback, but not just any quarterback. It was Dan Marino. And, you look at back then, it was Joe Montana, Elway, Marino, and Jim Kelly. Those were some of the top echelon quarterbacks in the NFL, and it was just like unheard of. So for me, it was a great thing because I knew I was going to probably get drafted in the first round, and I said I wanted to go somewhere warm. So when I got that call from Coach Shula, that was just like heaven sent. Warm. You got the beach, Miami. It was perfect. But then for some reason, they had an opportunity to pick up Keith Sims, and he was a great coach. I think he was rated as a first rounder as well. It's just they didn't. I think it was only two linemen went in the first round that year that I came out. So with him slipping to the second round, they had an opportunity to pick him up. They picked us up, and it was like a match made in heaven. We clicked instantly from day one, and then the thing that really helped was the 2 guys that were starters were veterans, Jeff Dellenbach and Roy Foster. They were having contract disputes. So once training camp started, we got a ton of reps. And I think that's really what played a huge development in us picking up everything so quickly. And, we had one of the best coaches that ever coached was John Sandusky. He's one of the best, and he really took time, and we were up under his tutelage, and he really accelerated the learning curve for us to where we could be ready for day one. It wasn't easy, but we worked hard, but he pushed us, and Coach Shula pushed us, and it just worked out. It just worked out for us. So I was definitely happy about that.
To say the least. To say the least. I mean, you guys created a pocket for Marino. A funny thing is, when you guys had those home games in the early portions of the year with the dirt on the infield and whatever, I mean, everyone's jersey was slopped except Marino's. It was unbelievable. My mom would come in and she would say, "Why is number 13's jersey just white, just crisp?" And I'm like, well, you see those dudes, number 78, number 69, that is why. So I'm never going to complain about a first round left tackle and a second round left guard. So with us in NFL draft month, this is the biggest draft, I think, in Miami Dolphin recent history. Let's go recent history, okay? And a lot of people are talking quarterback. They're going to draft, in all likelihood, a quarterback. Okay. I want 3 linemen in their first top 6 or 7 picks. Am I talking your language?
You're talking my language. I think you're right. And you know what? I would probably say this probably is maybe I hadn't did the research on the history, but I can't remember when the Dolphins have had 3 first-round picks in the first round. I remember the year before I came in, Sammy Smith and Louis Oliver were taken in that draft. That was 89. They were both first-round picks. But to have 3 first-round picks, that's almost unheard of. And then I think we got, maybe like 15 picks overall in the draft. So if we do things right, I do agree with you. I think it's going to definitely be a quarterback. Everybody's saying Tua now, but I'll just wait and see. But I could see a lineman, maybe 2 linemen in the first round, or if not, it'll be an offensive, defensive lineman. So I can see that happening, but this is I'd probably say this is the biggest draft the Dolphins have had in history, because I don't think they've had this many first rounders. And if you get all 3 of them right, it could make a huge difference immediately, because those are the type of impact players you want to bring in, and you want to get the high draft round picks. You want those guys to be proven and work out, and if that does, that really just takes your team to a whole nother level.
Well said. And to me, if they go quarterback, whomever it is, we're not going to go there. We're not going to put names attached to other quarterback names. But what we're going to do is we're going to maybe talk about a couple of left tackles that you might have watched. I know you're a college sports fan. I know you're a big-time college basketball fan. So we're both hurting. We're both hurting now that we're not in March Madness, I know. But it's draft month. So I have about 4 or 5 left tackles that I would be absolutely fine with, whether it's the first round, that 39th overall pick. But tell me about a guy who you've been watching that might be, look, I don't want to say the next Richmond Webb, because that's setting the bar a little too high for any young kid coming out of school. But who's going to be the next Richmond Webb?
I went to Texas A&M, so I watch a lot of SEC, ACC, Big Ten. Those are probably the 3 conferences I really pay a lot of attention to. And I watched Georgia like 2 or 3 games, and they have a tackle that's coming out that's supposed to be pretty highly rated. So I think they got him rated around the middle of the first round now. So that could be a possibility that we take a guy like that. It's just, I guess my experience, I like to speculate, but I actually had a chance to go to the draft last year and select a pick. And I was supposed to do the second round pick, but when it came time to do that, the Dolphins traded down. And then when it was time to do that pick, right before I did that pick, they actually traded for Josh Rosen, which I thought was a great move. And then the third pick, I went out, and it was Michael Dieter, was the lineman, and I thought that was a great pickup. So I think the general manager, Coach Flores, and it's like 2 or 3 guys, but they all work together, and I think they're working where it's not one guy just trying to get the credit. They're trying to do what's best for the Dolphins, and they actually had them playing as a team, and that's something that's huge. And it wasn't about guys trying to say, I need to get this for my stats, I need to get so many catches. They did whatever it took to win. And then I really seen Fitzpatrick, the guys really rally behind him. So I'm looking forward to be a good year, and I think we're gonna have a great draft. That's why I'm just sitting back. I think we'll have some surprises. I can see us trading down or trading a pick and maybe picking up 2 or 3 more, because I don't think we really as far away as I thought we were last year before the draft. So I'm really excited, and that's why I want to get this virus thing situated where everything can return to normal and I can get back to my football and all that, because I'm hurting a little bit right now.
As we all are. And listen, talking draft is fantastic because, the draft is literally going to be the only live kind of action where things are counting and changing in sport, So take me a little bit through, because the different situations, way back when, it was a weekend. It was Saturday and Sunday. Yeah. And it was a little less publicized. It was on ESPN, and Mel Kiper, same haircut. Same haircut.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. That's a conversation for another day. I don't know, but we'll talk about that. But what was your couple of weeks up until that experience? And I heard you say that Coach Shula called you. He was the first call that called you?
He was. What happens is, no, that's not the first call. So the draft back then was on Sunday. That was the first round.
Okay.
I was at home. I was in Dallas at my parents' house with my family, and before the draft, I think I got a call from the Raiders, and I think they had like maybe the 11th pick. They said, "We don't believe you'll be there. If you are, we're gonna take you." And I got a call from the Saints as well, and they said, "If you're there, we're gonna take you, this and that." And I said, "Okay." And actually, I believe John Sandusky from the Dolphins called and said, "If you're there, we're gonna take you." But everybody says that, and I've seen things. So I was just kind of like, okay, they're like, "We don't think you're gonna be on the board by the end, but if you're there, we're gonna take them." Like, okay, I said, I'll just wait it out. So Jeff George was the first pick. Blair Tone was second. Cortez, my good friend, he was third. Fourth was Keith McCants. Fifth was Junior Sal. And sixth was Mark Carrier. He went to the Bears. Seventh was Andre Ware, played against him in the Southwest Conference back then.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Eighth was Chris Singleton. And when they announced him, my mom's phone was ringing at the house. As soon as they announced him. So you got like 15 minutes back then for each draft. Most teams spent the whole 15 minutes. So when they were picking him, I was talking to Coach Hugh, and I said, "Hello." And he said, "Are you ready to be a Dolphin?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And he didn't have to tell me who it was. From just watching Monday Night Football, when I heard his voice, I knew it was him. And I could actually relax because it was nervous because, like you said, you got Mel Kiper, you had the Swami, you had Tom Jackson, and each pick, they're analyzing 4 or 5 guys, and I think my name came up 3 or 4 times before that, and they would always take somebody else. I was like, man, I can imagine having to sit through the whole thing, but they waited the 15 minutes, and then next thing you know, they said Miami's pick is in, but I knew 15 minutes earlier. I was waiting. And they show you a lot of highlights from the Senior Bowl, all that. A couple from Texas A&M, and that's who they selected. So I was happy, and I think the next year. The draft was Sunday. By Thursday or Friday, I was on a plane to Miami. So yeah, it happened that quick. Yeah.
What was the first thing? I mean, everyone's watching the draft. You're a Dolphin. What was the first thing that you did? What was the first thing that almost went through your mind, the moment of clarity that you realized I'm a professional football? I did it. You made it. You're a Dolphin.
It was a weight off my shoulders because like you say, everybody's speculating, and for me, I think by the end of my senior year, they were projecting me to be either a late first, early second rounder. And then I went to the Senior Bowl. I had a real good Senior Bowl, and then I moved up to maybe the middle of the first round, and then I went to the combine. I had a real good workout at the combine, so I shot up. At first, they were saying I could be as high as the fifth pick to San Diego. So it just shows you how things can change, and so you hear it, but then you try not to read everything because you'll convince yourself that's where you're supposed to go, and then if it doesn't happen, it's like a huge letdown. But once I got picked by the Dolphins, I was like, that's perfect. Coach Shula, Hall of Fame coach, and then Marino, the Mark brothers, Duper and Clayton. It was cool. And then you get to Miami, and then you actually meet those guys. So it's kind of like you and all, like you've seen these guys on Monday Night Football, but they're making it seem like it's no big deal. And then you actually get in the huddle with these guys, and you almost got to pinch yourself because you're like, man, is this really real? I'm actually, and the great thing about it, they were, I knew why they won a lot of games because they were very professional. When it was time to practice, that they had a standard set, and you knew when you got there, you had to fall in line. So they had great leadership, this and that, and that's why they worked hard, they were dedicated, and they were professionals. And that's the way I learned. I didn't reinvent the wheel. I just followed what those guys did.
Now, when you got to Miami, I know a lot of times, especially now, I know with all the social media and everything, Hard Knocks, we as fans, I mean, we're up close, and I love a couple little nuances of the game. You mentioned the Swami, Chris Berman, and a couple of things I want to not forget here, but the number one thing I want to ask you, and I'm one of those crazy Dolphin fans. I watched Inside the NFL. I know all the early 90s kind of stuff. And I remember there was an HBO little rookie year segment with you and Keith Sims.
I remember that.
Who gave you the nickname Bam Bam?
That was, when I went from high school to college, I was actually a defensive lineman, and then I made the transition when I was at A&M. But I think it was another defensive lineman. I want to say it was either O'Neal Gilbert or Chet Brooks, a guy that was from Dallas from me. But that was my nickname, and if you played on the team, we never really called each other by our actual names. Just by everybody had a nickname. So depending on what your nickname, that's what you answered to. And I've had to ask a couple of old college teammates. I'm like, hey, what is his real name? Because this is what we just called him all the time. So some of them I know, but I was like, man, it's just funny. But yeah, that's how I got the name Bam Bam from the Flintstones. Remember, he was a little kid with the little club stick that was real strong. So yeah, they called me Bam Bam.
I love it. That's fantastic. And, if only social media was around when you were drafted, maybe you would have been a number one. Or maybe, would life have been so different if you were protecting a guy like a Dan Marino? You had so many just legends in and around that organization when you came in. How do you think social media, if you can kind of go back in time, do you think that would have created a little bit of I don't think Don Shula would have liked Twitter.
No, I don't know if I would have liked them because I think if you're careful, you can get caught up in it and you can lose focus of what you're actually supposed to be doing. So I'm glad it wasn't around when I wasn't. I'm glad I played in the era that I did. I think no matter what era I played in, I probably would have been good. But the thing with social media is, and this is one thing I don't like about social media, is you can say something, say you're 18 years old, and I've seen people that's, 40 years old or whatever, and they'll go back and they'll say, well, you said this when you were 22. And I'm like, okay, yeah, we've all made dumb mistakes, but you're going to hold something I did, 10 or 15 years ago and make a decision based on now. That's the only thing I don't like. I think sometimes people are not as forgiving or understanding or realize that, hey, I did some dumb stuff at times when I was that age. So that's it. But man, you can lose your job or whatever quick, man. That
Oh, yeah.
social media is a powerful tool now. I've seen that, and I was like, I do like it, but it can be used just like anything, good or bad. So that's the only drawback that I don't like about it.
Exactly. I mean, you got to look before you leap, but you also got to look before you click tweet or retweet or anything like that. But reading the stories, and one of the reasons, again, we spoke before the show, growing up in that New York Northeast area, it was very difficult to see a lot of Dolphin games. I had my 2 Jet games, a couple of Monday nighters, and then I'd have a lot of joy in week, like the preseason, when the Newsday would come out, and it would be like 30 pages of Jet and Giant coverage, a story on Dan Marino, a story on Montana or whatever, and then like the big schedule. And then I would highlight games. All right, the Jets are playing the Pats on Monday night. Maybe I'll get, the Bills game. I'm going to see that Dolphins-Bills game. And I caught a lot of fun games. I mean, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, you just rattled off the top 10 of the class, so I'm sure you know games and years. It was up in Buffalo. It was when he, 93, when he broke Unitas's, when he passed Unitas. He had that scramble rushing touchdown where he dove in.
I remember that. Okay.
I don't remember many rushing touchdowns for Dan, but he was always very able to move. But I remember the play, and Byers was, I think, a lead blocker or was going out for whatever. And I don't think the plan was for Marino to go in and scramble to the left. Right. But I remember Bruce Smith, and we'll get into that. You sent him to like out of Orchard Park, and then all of a sudden Marino just scores a touchdown and dives in. I mean, tell me about that relationship or that rivalry that you have with Bruce Smith, because I have some fun stats that I'm going to throw your way about that specific. That was your Ali-Frazier.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I had to research it because, you get there, and of course, just like college, anything, you got rivalries, but it was just like the Jets rivalry was tough, but the Bills seemed like it was extremely tough. And I was like, why do they hate the Dolphins so much? And I mean, the fans, Buffalo is a blue collar town, true diehard fans. They do ride with the Bills, but I think in the 70s, the Dolphins beat the Bills like 20 times in a row.
Every time.
And so it was
every
like,
time.
I say, that's why it's so much hatred. And then I got there, and I think we beat the Bills my rookie year in Miami, but we lost to them in Buffalo. Then we had to go back and play another playoff game up there, and we lost that. But, it was just like, it was almost like whoever had the ball last, but they had some great teams.
Oh, yeah.
That's why they went to the Super Bowl 4 years in a row. But that was the only team that we just couldn't get past. We could beat them, but it was just like, man, they had so many weapons and they played so well. And I always say that they should have won that Super Bowl against the Giants. I think they would have won that one.
The Norwood kick.
Yeah. It was just like, man, they had some great. I tell people that all the time. Don't look at they lost 4 Super Bowls, but they were one of the best teams in the NFL. So I had a lot of respect for them. I didn't like them, but I had to respect them.
That's the perfect way to say it. And, obviously you mentioned Jim Kelly. I went to college in Buffalo. So I had the pleasure of going to 2 live Dolphin games. Unfortunately, in 1999, Marino had a little injury. I saw Damon Heward. I got a Damon Heward special. It was all right. And it wasn't a win. I think you guys took a loss that game. It was, 1999. And the next year, 2000, when I think it was the first year of Jay Fiedler, we got a good winner. Yeah. Yep. But let me confirm something that you said about Buffalo fans. They hate us. Like,
no question.
Hey, it is the Super Bowl in Buffalo, September 12th, when the Dolphins are up there. And brings me back to another one of my earlier memories. You mentioned Louis Oliver, one of my favorite. I close my eyes, I see Louis Oliver, I see the orange chin strap. I see that big, huge pants and the orange chin strap. Because when I think 90s, I'm wearing my aqua, but I think white on top, aqua pants, the orange stripe, and Irving Fryer and Louis Oliver's orange chin strap. And that game in Buffalo, again, Buffalo. And here's why they hate us. I think it's Louis Oliver's fault. Right? I love Louis Oliver. He had 3 picks, took him to the house.
3 picks, yeah, and then he took one back for like 100 yards or something.
102, I think, 104.
Yeah.
I think there was a record like after the fact because they had a, whatever the fact, but he was riding them Buffaloes right in front of the camera, and that's a big reason why that they don't forget.
They don't forget at all. You're right about that. Yeah.
Let's talk about Bruce Smith. Okay. Bruce Smith, I mean, look. Probably for anybody's money, top 2, top 3 sack master on the defensive end, on the defensive line of all time. Do you know the inside numbers against the AFC East when Bruce Smith tried to get past you to get to the quarterback? I mean, look, he got sometimes to Dan.
He did, yeah.
Sometimes. But do you know comparatively against the Colts, for anyone not listening or not going back to the 90s, the Colts were an AFC East divisional rival, along with the Patriots and the Bills and the Jets. Against the Colts and against the Patriots, Bruce Smith, the chances of him, his average of sacks per times playing those AFC East rivals were close to 1 a game. Against the Colts, it was 0.7. Against the Pats, it was 0.8. Okay. Against the Jets, you got a sack a game. It was 1.1.
Wow.
You were half that, sir. He was taken out. He was 0.5. He averaged a half a sack a game in his career against the Dolphins. He averaged a full sack and then a little bit more against the Jets. That doesn't sound like a lot. That's ridiculous for the greatest sack man in the world. Are there any stories that you could tell me about how just you might have gotten him frustrated? Did he do anything? Did you frustrate him?
No, he wasn't a big trash talker. But I think the thing a lot of people don't realize is that, sometimes we would throw the football 60 times a game. So that made it even tougher because most teams are more balanced. They might run it 25, 30 times and then throw it, maybe 30, 35 times a game. So that makes it a little easier. But, it'll be games sometime where we throw the ball 60 times and run it 10 or 12 times.
Those were my favorite games, and I know you probably like run blocking too. But
I love run blocking. It helps take the edge off of those pass rushes.
Oh yeah.
And I think with Dan not being mobile, they would just drop. We would see some line stunts and linebacker blitzes and stuff that be like they could try stuff because they knew Dan wasn't gonna run it, and it probably surprised them, like you say when he scored that touchdown up there. When he took off and ran, it probably caught him in shock because it's like he's actually running. He never runs. You know what I'm saying? You could count on the times that Dan ran. So yeah, you're right about that. But man, he was a bad man. If you put that ball in his hands, he could march us down the field. And I mean, a 2-minute drill was easy for him. You gave him 2 minutes. That was yeah, he was a bad man.
That's when everyone asks me, all right, you're from New York, why are you a Dolphin fan? It's one name, it's Dan Marino. And then if they want to listen to me for 47 more minutes, I'll tell them about all my other players and everything. But everything for me, and I'll ask you, my next question, but just to give on a little sidebar, for me, everything kind of happened year to year to year to year. Found football, you and Sims were a rookie together, and then you had the transfer from such amazing receivers, the Marx brothers and then to Irving Fryer, and then obviously you had O.J. McDuffie who came in, of course, but the Dolphins were so national. You had Larry Zonka on American Gladiators in my youth. You had Nick Bonaconte, the late great Nick Bonaconte on Inside the NFL, and you learn about the history. And so when people joke about the perfect season, I'm like that old uncle who's like the Revolutionary War buff. Like I talk about the Dolphins because you guys as an organization deserve that. And there always has to be a level of pride for rookies coming on in there. So was there, when you're looking at the transfer from kind of greats to new legends, and then obviously from Shula to Jimmy Johnson, just take me through just how that experience felt to be part of something I think greater than football. I do truly believe.
Yeah, what you gotta look at is, and the way I looked at it is, the Dolphins were one of the winningest franchises when I got there. So there was already a ton of history. You learned about the 17-0 season, but living there and some of the guys that still lived in Miami after they retired, you actually got to meet those guys like Manny Fernandez. Joe Rose was,
Of course.
doing television, stuff like that. So when you meet those guys, you get to learn about the history. And I thought Coach Shula was tough until I think one year I was talking to Larry Zunk and some of the older guys, and they started telling me how they had to do 3-a-days during training camp. And I couldn't say nothing. I was just like, what? So, I mean, it just shows you, like now guys, they don't even really do 2-a-days in training camp no more. So, but the 3-a-days, and then you look at the type of money that those guys made, and a lot, most of the time you played football, but in the off season, you had to go get a job to take care of your family because you didn't make enough. So it just gave me a different appreciation, and you get to hear the stories and the history and what other guys went through, and you're like, man, I shouldn't be complaining. These guys here, they set the standards, they set the bar high, and they're just like me. Even when the Dolphins lose this and that, I'm pissed off. When we win, I'm happy, and they were the same thing. It was the expectation that they started this, and they want to keep it going, and that's why every year, when everybody loses whatever, they pop that champagne every year to celebrate that, because
it's the best.
That's the greatest thing. Yep.
When I was, again, mid-90s, 96, 97, football was getting faster. The records were getting, you obviously had Favre coming on in. You had all these quarterbacks just chasing Marino. And then the Swami, Chris Berman, that was 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, prime time. I love the nicknames. So before the next question, Marco Coleman, every time that Marco would get a sack, Chris Berman would scream out, Marco, and then Tommy Jackson would go, Coleman. And it was just great. It was great. And every time, if I was no internet, so if I'm watching a Jet game and I just saw a scroll of the score, I'm pacing in a living room at 14 years old. Thank God for DirecTV. That made things a lot easier for me. But I do want to ask you about that transition. Shula to Jimmy Johnson. Just, if anything, was a massive difference. I mean, two legendary coaches. And what was the ins and outs of the difference?
I think the thing is that it was a difference. I think Coach Johnson wanted to show everybody that he was in charge, and first came in, I think we had tight end Eric Green we had picked up from Pittsburgh.
Oh yeah. And
he cut a couple of guys that you just didn't think nobody, you would have normally figured these guys were safe, they were going to make the team. And I think he did that, one, just to show people that, hey, I'll cut anybody. Two, it was the expectation of what he expected. So I knew he had came from Dallas and played with a guy in college, Kevin Smith. He was a cornerback for the Cowboys. And I just called him up and I said, hey, man, what type of guy is this? What you need? He said, man, as long as you go to work, practice hard, and don't do no distraction, he said, you'll be fine, which it was. I mean, we had to work. I think the first year was really, really tough. We were in pads Wednesday, Thursday, and half pads on Friday, which was normally we was on shorts and helmets, but you just did what was asked of you and got through it. But one thing I could respect was, their knowledge of the game, their preparation, getting you prepared for each game. Both coaches, they were both great coaches, but probably a little bit more partial to, I am more partial to Coach Shula because he drafted me and brought me there. But Coach Johnson was a good coach as well. I don't have nothing bad to say about him.
I mean, again, growing up with those coaches, it's almost like an individual like me is a little spoiled with what I witnessed. So the last 20 years have been great. Let me tell you that. But I'm ready. I'm ready for this team to get back to where they were. And before, I go a little bit more, I don't want to keep you all night, favorite nickname. You said everyone had a nickname. What, in your playing days, your teammate that had the best nickname? You don't have to tell me why it was given, but who had the best nickname?
I think when I got to um, when I got to Miami, I think Jarvis Williams, he's a defensive back, came from University of Florida with Louis Oliver. He called me Big Dog, so that stuck. And then some of the guys called me Big Money because I was a first round pick and I was a big guy. So that was a name. But those two, most of the time, was Big Dog. Was my nickname during my Dolphin playing career.
Works for me. Best on-field moment, not the fake spike. The best on-field play moment when you're in between the sidelines and you're jumping, going crazy. What was it?
Well, I can tell you this. It definitely, I would have never said the fake spike.
Oh, okay.
And let me tell you why it was a great play. But we broke the huddle, and we used to just call it a clock play. So that's Marino gets the snap and throw it in the deal. Well, if you really look at that play, if you look at all the linemen, we look like we're just caught off guard, totally surprised. And so, which we were. And after the game, I think either I did or Keith Sims asked, Dan, said, hey, if y'all were doing that, why didn't y'all tell us? And they said, oh, we tell y'all because y'all would have messed it up. If you look at it, you'll see, because I kind of just relaxed, put my hand up, and then all of a sudden I see the guy react, and I was like, react. I'm like, what's going on? Why is he rushing?
The cameraman missed it because I'm watching, and it's almost like he's about to climb, and then boom, you panned over. Then the next thing I see is Ingram putting his hands up, and that was his third, right? I think he had 2 or 3 that day.
Yeah,
but
I think you're right.
What was just that best moment?
Best moment. I think. Okay, I know one that just sticks out. Just came on my mind. It was my rookie year, first playoff game. We were playing Kansas City Chiefs, and it was a tight game. We was in Miami, and the play was, if you can go back and watch it, but Marino hit Mark Clayton, and Albert Lewis was covering him, and Marino put the ball down low, and Clayton had to reach for it, but Albert Lewis went for the interception. If he was a hair quicker, it's 6 points for Kansas City going the other way, and Clayton caught it, stopped without going out of bounds, turned around and ran in, and we won the game. And I can remember the whole stadium like just erupting, and that was huge. And I can remember we felt confident going back to Buffalo, which we played well. We scored 34 points, but they scored 44. We lost, but it was actually fun playing that game. But that Kansas City game stuck out because they had Derek Thomas, Neil Smith, and then you remember the big guy, Nigerian Nightmare,
Christian Okoye.
So, yeah, that was taking us back. Schottenheimer was the coach, and Steve DeBerg, I think, was he the quarterback?
Miami Dolphin backup legend, Steve DeBerg.
Yep.
Oh yeah. Is it true that Marino gave DeBerg the prize money when Marino hit that moving target in that quarterback challenge? There's a folk legend. Do you know anything about that?
I've heard that story, but I don't know if it's true.
All right. Yeah, he would. That's completely believable.
Yeah, it's believable, but yeah, because I'm telling you, Dan had it, and once he got pissed off, that was the time that you was gonna get the best football.
I was going to ask you.
Him off or whatever. Yeah.
I was going to ask you your best Marino story, but I'll tell you what. Does it involve him being a little upset?
Yeah.
Best Marino story that you can tell me safely without any.
It was just like if it wasn't necessarily the defense did anything, but say if we were trying to and we got stalled, say 3 and out, and things are not going the way he going, or he don't like the play calling or whatever. He would get over there with Coach Shula and Gary Stevens, and next thing he say, "Hey, if y'all block them, I will eat they. You know what? He just." But you could tell just a different look getting in his eye. You could tell he was pissed off, and then he's like, "Okay." just do what he tell you to do, this and that. And the fun thing was he would call a play and he would tell, you know, he might say, Duke, you run this, Clayton, you run this, but if he does this, it was almost like sandlot football. He would give him a couple of options and say, okay, if he plays you this way, do this, and I'll go over the top and be like, you just sit there and you'd be like, did that just happen? And then people would always say, man, y'all just scored so fast. Why can't y'all do that all the time? I'm like, hey, man, whatever players call, I just do that. It doesn't happen that way, but when you got something like that, and in case of emergency, you can break the glass. It's always good to have something like that. But yeah,
no fun.
Those were the times that were fun.
Marino would just basically show you guys the ball and run patterns on the hand like a backyard game, and just make sure you got ready, right?
All we needed was the protection, and then he would get with his receivers. He'd tell this guy this, you do this, you do this. If you play you this way, you do this, and they would remember it. And that way, he had a couple of options. So once he walked up, you know, he would always lick the fingers or whatever, survey the defense, and then next thing, once he got the ball in his hand, he was ready to go to work. So yeah, that was it.
Unbelievable. Yeah, I mean, the memories are rushing back. You know, I completely appreciate this, Richmond. If you can get us out of here with your one player currently I mean, it could be a veteran, and when I say veteran, a couple of years in, obviously, but who are you looking at? Who's your, you know, the guy that you're really rooting for, let's say?
I'm gonna tell you what, I really like the way the team rallied around Fitzpatrick last year. And I know he's an older veteran, and I think he knows that, you know, he's been in the game long enough to where he know they're gonna bring in a young quarterback. But he's a team player. He can teach a young guy, you know, whatever he needs to prepare him for the next. He just seems like he's the ultimate teammate. So I really like him, and based on the way the team kind of rallied around and played for him, I want to see him continue to do well.
That sounds great, and I agree. And again, I want to thank you and for your time, and obviously, you know, your family are, you know, be well and continue that great story that you said that your wife is doing that terrific work. And if you have anything else to say, you know, what you're up to when everything clears the air and we're okay, what's going on in the Webb home and household these days?
Other than that, you know, my youngest daughter, she's graduating this year, so she hadn't been able to go to school, but she's going to be attending Texas A&M, me and my wife's old alma mater. So
there you go.
That's a good thing. It's just, man, I appreciate you having me on your show and giving me the opportunity. I don't take them lightly. So I've had fun, and hopefully down the road, maybe we can do it again. But I definitely had fun, and I always love talking football. So I appreciate you giving me this opportunity.
You can have it anytime you want, my friend. And thank you so much for this. I truly appreciate it. Number 78, one of the all-time greats. And thanks for everything. And I really just hope you guys have a great, easy, healthy time down there, and hope to see you at a Dolphin game someday.
Sounds good, Jason. You have a good one.
You too, sir. Be well. Have a great night. Thanks again.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Take care.